.uk. This video series, this is the first part of the video series. We are going to introduce about the genetics. From the scratch we're going to begin, and what is a gene, a DNA, and kind of alleles we're going to introduce. In the future steps we're going to be more advanced, and we're going to add more lessons. Like it could be valuable for your undergraduate studies, maybe your postgraduates, or probably you are going for a MSc, and probably you're doing a research about your PhD. And this kind of stages, different stages, is going to be advanced. But in here we simply gonna discuss about the genes and their introduction. Well, you have different definitions for a gene. In simple way, you can say a gene is the basic physical and functional unit of heredity. You probably ask, like, what is the physical and functionality? Physical and functional is mean in your heredity, your hereditary data which can be stored in their gene. So in that case, if you talk about a chromosome, there are different segments allocated for a gene. A gene can be translated to a protein by RNA. So this is the basic unit of the chromosome that you can find, and this is the unit actually will be translated to a protein. When it comes to the building block of the gene or the chromosome is the DNA. And then we can talk about the DNA in our next slide. And then basically humans, they do have nearly about 20,000, 25,000 genes. And to be honest, if you say about the genes, and each and every human being, that they do have the same kind of same amount of and the same genes in their nucleotide. And also they align into an antiparallel in chromosome, and each chromosome, and you have 2 copies of gene. We will talk about them in the future slides. Here I'm showing a segment of a gene, and this is basically the chromosome that you see. And if you get a small part of the chromosome, that you'll see this kind of a long chain if you unwrap them, and this is the one segment which is we call gene, a segment that can be translated into a protein. Okay, so the building block of a gene is DNA. So in a DNA we call deoxyribonucleic acid. As a definition, you can say it's the hereditary material in humans and almost all other organisms that you could find in DNA. But in some cases, some organisms, they do have RNAs as well. And these DNAs, most of them located in the cell nucleus, but still you can find some DNAs in mitochondria as well. So that's why we don't say that all the DNAs are stored in cell nucleus, but still you'll find the DNAs in the mitochondria as well. So there are about 4 chemical bases in DNA. We call adenine, symbolized by capital A, guanine, symbolized by G, cytosine is symbolized by C, and finally thymine is symbolized by T. In here you can see some kind of structures of the adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. Where you can see this is the antiparallel chain of the DNA, also there's a colored by this different type of nitrogen bases. So, but when it comes to how they pair with each other, they don't pair with like everyone, but there are ways pattern that they do pair, where you can see adenine is only pairing with thymine and the cytosine only pairing with the guanine. So for example, on here the blue color one is cytosine, and it should need to be paired with the guanine. And in a similar way, the rest of them are paired with their respective base. But when it comes to make one DNA, there are about 3 molecules that should need to be combined with each other. A base, as we mentioned before, it could be any adenine or guanine or cytosine or thymine, and a sugar. There's a deoxyriboxane and a phosphate, where the 3 of these molecules combine and make the DNA. Okay, we talk about alleles. As I mentioned before in our previous slides, but almost all genes, they are very, very similar to each and every person. So you could be questioning like, how do we different from each other? Yeah, so in this situation, there are nearly about 1% of difference you can find in genes. So that 1% of the difference would make it could be your eyes, it could be your skin, it could be your hair, that make a difference in each and every person. So that difference we call allele. So allele we can define as alleles are the same gene with small difference in their DNA sequence. I will show you how alleles are working in our next slide. So these differences are basically combined, and then we make it will make a unique person apart from using the gene. So there are 2 kind of alleles you can find. One is called recessive and the other one is dominant alleles. Recessive alleles only be shown up if the individual has 2 copies of it combined into a chromosome. As I mentioned before, every person has 2 pairs of each chromosome. So if in the first case, the recessive alleles, if you see 2 of them, both of them are appeared in the gene, so then that particular recessive allele will be shown in the person or as individual. But when it comes to a dominant alleles, they always show either one pair shows them or either both of them shows. It doesn't really matter, because the dominant alleles always show that particular feature in that individual without necessarily, it doesn't necessarily want to be shown both. So in here that we have an example for blue eyes. So blue eyes alleles and the brown eyes. The brown eyes alleles is the dominant one and the blue eyes is the recessive one. In this example where you can see this allele is the dominant one, so obviously this person has the brown eyes. In here this allele is for the blue eyes, is actually for the recessive allele. So if you don't have both of them appeared in your chromosomes, and then you won't see them. So in here, in this example, individual C, there's homozygous recessive, which shows blue eyes, that feature. In this one, individual A, does only have one copy of this one and one copy of the recessive. So you can see a dominant allele doesn't need to be appear for both. So in this individual you will see brown eye. Okay, this is the end of this series. We talk about very simply about gene, chromosome, DNA, and alleles. I have been quickly going through about this, but these are the simple and the basic of the genetics. But I'm going to show you some more complex things like CRISPR, how the gene work, and then translations of the transcription. So these things I will show in my future videos. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. You can send an email to me, kevin@genesmith.uk, or you can simply follow me at Twitter at genesmith.uk. Or if you have any question, simply comment below. I will reply to your questions. Thank you very much.